The day my husband passed away, my mother-in-law changed the locks on my house. "This house belongs to me now. You can stay in the garage," she yelled, throwing all my things out onto the street. I just smiled, and the day she went on vacation and took the keys to my car, what I did with the house surprised even me. When they closed the coffin, Martina felt as if with the lid, they were also burying her right to exist. She was 34 years old. Pale face, sunken eyes from sleepless nights, and a thin body that spoke of long silences, of those tears that make no sound but weigh like stones. She wore black, as mourning dictated, but what she carried inside wasn't grief. It was emptiness. Hugo, her husband, had died less than 48 hours earlier. A heart attack in his sleep. He left no letter, no warning, no farewell. He only left that soft scent still lingering on the pillow, a half-washed cup in the kitchen, and a hole in Martina's chest that grew wider with every second. The church was half full. Some neighbors, a few coworkers, the pastor who barely knew Hugo, and Angela, her mother-in-law. That woman who, from day one, had made it clear that Martina would never be enough for her only son. Angela didn't cry. Not a tremor, not a nostalgic glance. She sat upright, wearing a pearl gray dress that clashed with everything. She had the same expression she wore when serving coffee, rigid, dry, soulless. Martina watched everything in silence. When she approached the coffin one last time, she touched the edge with her fingers. She leaned in. No one heard what she said to Hugo, but it was brief. Something between a goodbye and a promise. "I loved you even when you already knew you were leaving," she whispered with a broken voice. "And still, you left without telling me what was going to happen to me." The funeral ended without hugs. No one held her. Not even Angela, who, leaving the cemetery, walked alone toward the car. She didn't even look at her. Back home, Martina found the front door locked with 2 turns. She knocked once. Twice. Nothing. Then she saw the locksmith getting out of a white car. He smiled politely. She didn't understand. "Martina, right?" the man said as he opened his toolbox. "I was called to change the lock." "What do you mean you're changing it?" "This is my house. My husband and I lived here." Angela's voice came from inside. Sharp. Cold. "You lived here. Now it's mine." The door opened slowly. Angela appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes shining with something that wasn't sadness. It was triumph. "I don't have time to argue. Hugo left me the house. You can stay in the garage if you want. If not, you can find a shelter. I'll make sure you never bother me again." Martina felt like her soul was being torn out with fingernails. She stood still, lips trembling, legs weak. The locksmith looked at her awkwardly but kept working. You can't do this," she said quietly, as if asking permission just to keep breathing. Angela laughed. A brief, hollow laugh. Then she threw a black bag down the stairs. "Your things. The little you had. The ones that were worth something, I'm keeping. This couch is Hugo's. The TV too. The silverware I brought. You have nothing left, Martina. Accept it with dignity if you have any left." The bag fell heavily, bursting open when it hit the ground. Martina's clothes scattered like rags. A pair of shoes, some books, a frame with a photo of her and Hugo, broken. Martina went down the stairs silently. She picked up the photo. Her fingers traced the crack in the glass right where Hugo's face was. At that moment, it started to rain. It was a fine, persistent rain, like a sentence. Martina's suitcase soaked in seconds. So did she. But she didn't move, nor did she cry. She just sat on the edge of the sidewalk, under the rain, looking at her own house, the house she built with her husband, and that now felt foreign to her. Minutes later, a door opened halfway. It was Letitia, the neighbor from number 17. A widowed woman, about 60 years old, with gray hair and an expression of genuine compassion. "Martina, dear, come inside. You're going to get sick out here." She shook her head. "I'm already sick," she replied without looking at her. Letitia approached. She put a blanket over her, the only dry one. Then she knelt in front of her. "I don't care what that viper says. I know what you did for Hugo. You don't deserve this. If you want, you can stay in the garage. I have the old key. They never changed the lock." Martina looked up. "The garage?" "Yes, at the back of the house. It has a small side door. No one uses it. If you need time, you'll be safe there. It's not fair, but at least it's something." That night, Martina slept in the garage, on an old mattress with a portable lamp that Letitia lent her. The smell of dampness was strong. The walls were full of boxes, memories that weren't hers. But for the first time in days, she felt a space without yelling, without cruelty. At dawn, she opened a box at random. She was looking for a thicker blanket. What she found left her frozen. It was a blue-covered notebook. Old, dusty. When she opened it, she recognized the handwriting. It was Hugo's. The first pages talked about expenses, notes, lists. Then, more personal phrases began. "I don't trust Mom. She looks at me like she's waiting for me to die. Martina doesn't know anything. But if this falls into her hands, she'll know what to do." Martina felt a chill. She closed the notebook again. She hid it under the mattress. She wasn't ready to read it all. Not that night. In the morning, Angela saw her going in and out of the garage and shouted from the balcony, "Enjoy your new little house, cockroach. Hugo is mine, never yours." Martina didn't answer. She clenched her teeth, kept walking. But something inside her, something that had been asleep for months, lit up. It wasn't hate. It wasn't revenge. It was memory. And memory has a particular way of becoming dangerous when it finds the right evidence. The following week was brutal. Angela walked around the neighborhood with her friends, showing off the house like it was a newly acquired property. She talked about renovations, selling the garage, making an office. Martina swept the leaves in the yard without looking up. In silence. Every night she read one more page of Hugo's notebook. Every night, she found a more disturbing confession. "Mom forced me to change the will. She told me that if I didn't, she'd reveal what happened with the fire. Amelia is still alive. But I don't know for how long. Maybe Martina can find her." That last line left her breathless. Who was Amelia? That question became a seed that would start growing strong in the next chapter of her life. But for now, Martina stayed in the garage. She stayed in the house where she had been a wife, but now she was only a shadow who swept, who cooked for herself, who lived like an intruder in her own home. Until the letter from the bank arrived. In Hugo's name. In it, a reference to a secondary account, not registered in the will. And the notebook had the password written on a folded page. Martina smiled for the first time in weeks. Not out of joy, out of certainty. Because deep down, Hugo hadn't left her alone. He had only left clues. And Martina was ready to find them all. What Angela didn't know was that the cockroach had learned to survive in the dark. And very soon, she would learn to crawl toward the light with sharp teeth. Martina had learned not to cry out loud. In the garage, every night became an act of resistance. She slept on a mattress that reeked of confinement, surrounded by old boxes, rusty tools, and rags that once had been used to wash Hugo's car. The light bulb hung from a single wire, flickering when the dampness overpowered the wiring. There were no windows, only a thin slot that let in a thread of light at dawn. No hot water, no bathroom, no space to breathe. And yet, that corner had become the only place where she could think without fear. Every night, after making sure Angela was asleep, she would take out the notebook. The blue covers were already covered with fingerprints. Her eyes scanned the pages as if they were a map to something she couldn't name. There were dates, names, accounts, phrases written in desperation. Some crossed out, others underlined. In every word, you could feel the weight of a man who wanted to speak but didn't know how. The most recent message she had found still throbbed in her chest. If something happens to me, look for Amelia. That name didn't appear in any family story she remembered. And when she read it, she didn't feel it as a clue. She felt it as a warning. The notebook also had references to a bank account. Hugo had written a password next to the name of a digital bank. It seemed like a parallel account. Martina wasn't an expert with numbers, but she knew something was hidden there. Maybe a reserve, maybe an escape. That day, Letitia, the neighbor from apartment 17, brought her a hot coffee. She came in without asking permission, with a look mixing pity and respect. "Martina, dear, did you get any sleep?" Martina shook her head. She held the notebook in her hands like it was burning her. "This notebook, it's Hugo's. It has things I don't understand." Letitia sat next to her. She took one of the pages Martina had set aside. "Who is Amelia?" Letitia asked quietly. "I don't know, but Hugo says to look for her, to trust her. He also talks about his mother, about Angela. He says she forced him to sign documents, that he was afraid." Letitia nodded with a seriousness only years lived can give. "I always knew that woman was hiding something. When you and Hugo got married, she didn't say a word. She just watched, like someone waiting for something to go wrong. I don't understand how someone can hate so much. Not even at the funeral did she seem affected. She just wanted to bury him quickly, like her own dead son was a burden." Letitia sighed and looked down. Hugo was always quiet, but he was good, very good. Sometimes good people don't know how to defend themselves from poison. And Angela, she always knew how to manipulate, even her own son. Martina opened a page marked with pencil. There was a phrase written with a shaky hand. I signed. I had no choice. She threatened me with the fire. Martina read that line 3 times. She kept repeating it in her head. The fire. The notebook didn't explain more. Just that, a threat, a signature, and a woman with power. "Did you know anything about a fire?" she asked, turning to Letitia. The woman went pale. "Fire? No, I don't remember. Although, wait. Many years ago, there was a rumor. A house near where Angela used to live. They said a woman died, but no one could prove anything. Do you think Angela? With her? I believe anything." Martina closed the notebook. The coffee had cooled. Outside, the rain fell again, as if the city was crying inside too. That same afternoon, when silence ruled the house, Martina turned on Hugo's old phone. She had hidden it in the garage the day Angela kicked him out of the room. The device had a cracked screen, but it still worked. She looked through the voice notes. She expected to find normal audios. Instead, she found recordings titled with specific dates. She played the most recent one. Hugo's voice came through, slow, exhausted. "If you're listening to this, it's because I'm no longer here. I don't know how much time I have left. Mom is not who she says she is. If something happens to me, look for Amelia. She has the truth. The will wasn't my decision. She pressured me. She said everyone would find out about the fire. I didn't want to drag you into this, but now I can't do more. I'm sorry, Martina." Martina brought her hands to her mouth. Hugo's voice continued, breaking up. "Don't leave. Don't let her win. That house was ours. But if you can't get it back, at least destroy the lie." The audio ended. Martina dropped the phone as if it burned her. The garage seemed smaller now, darker, more dangerous. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, Angela opened the front door and shouted as if talking to a servant. "I'm going out. I don't want to see you around here. Don't touch my things. Remember who lives here and who's just passing through." Martina didn't answer. She walked to the back of the garden. She grabbed the hose. She watered the plants she had planted years ago. Angela hated them, but Hugo insisted on keeping them. Letitia appeared at the gate. "Are you okay?" "Yes, better than yesterday." "Are you going to do something?" Martina nodded without looking up. I'm going to find Amelia. What if she doesn't exist? If she doesn't exist, then the lie will have nowhere to hide. In the following days, Martina investigated. She used Letitia's computer. She checked records, searched names on social media, explored old forums. Every clue seemed to vanish, until she found a mention on a lost blog. Amelia Rivas, former social worker. Last registered address in a town 4 hours away. She saved the address. She didn't know how she would get there. She had no car, no money, but she had the notebook and something more valuable, determination. That same night, she discovered another recording. This time, Hugo was talking about a transfer. I saved something in the secondary account. Not much, but maybe it will help you. The password is in the notebook. Don't trust anyone. Martina searched. On the folded page was the password. She logged into the system. The account had a modest amount. Enough to get around, to eat, to reach Amelia. She decided not to tell Letitia yet. Not yet. She knew she would protect her, but she also feared someone might leak something to Angela. That woman had eyes everywhere. The next morning, Martina pretended she was going to the market. She took a bus, then another. She spent the day traveling, reading and rereading the notebook. Every word seemed clearer now. Every line revealed not only fear but remorse. Hugo had wanted to talk. It was just too late. When she arrived in the town, the house was in ruins. The garden abandoned. The gate rusted. She knocked on the door. No one answered. A neighbor came out from the front. Are you looking for Amelia? Yes. I'm a friend of Hugo's. The woman nodded. Amelia lives now in a care home. She can't be alone anymore. She lost her sight, but she still remembers many things. Martina felt a knot in her stomach. Hours later, she found her. Amelia was sitting by a window, blind, but with her eyes open, as if she was seeing something from within. Martina introduced herself. She spoke about Hugo. She said she was looking for answers. Amelia trembled when she heard his name. Hugo is dead? Yes. Then I'm not afraid to speak anymore. The elderly woman told a story that shattered everything Martina thought she knew. Angela was not Hugo's biological mother. She was a friend of his real mother. When Amelia fell ill, Angela offered to take care of the boy. She never gave him back. When Amelia tried to get him back, her house burned down. She survived by a miracle. No one could prove anything. Angela moved to another city, with Hugo registered under her name. She forged papers, used influence. Martina didn't know whether to cry or scream. She recorded everything on her phone. Amelia gave her permission. If this helps bring justice, then do it. I have nothing left to lose. That night, Martina slept in a cheap boarding house. She didn't want to go back yet. She was afraid Angela would sense the change in her eyes. The notebook, Amelia's testimony, the recordings, were no longer just memories. They were weapons. She returned home the next day, entered the garage, looked up at the ceiling, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She felt like a strategist. Angela still believed Martina was broken. She kept throwing cruel remarks from the stairs, kept talking on the phone as if she owned everything. But Martina no longer swept like before. Now she was doing it on purpose. She no longer bowed her head. She was no longer a guest. She was the only one holding the truth in her hands. And the truth, once it finds the light, doesn't need permission to enter. Just a crack, a voice, a story someone dares to tell. And Martina was ready to shout it to the world, even if it was from the garage, even if no one believed her yet, because the cockroach was no longer crawling. It was learning to fly. Martina returned from the village with red eyes, but not from crying, rather from the weight of a truth that hung heavy in her throat like lead. Amelia hadn't just given her a testimony, she had entrusted her with a story silenced for years, a truth someone had tried to erase with fire. She could still smell the faint perfume of the old woman on her clothes, that scent of damp wood and frozen time. But what stayed with her most was the way Amelia clenched her fingers while telling her story, as if she were holding on to the little past she had left. When Martina arrived at the garage, Angela was at the back door on the phone. Her voice sounded irritated. "Yes, of course I'm the only heir. No, there are no other papers. All that's left is for that starving brat to try and claim something." Martina paused for a few seconds. She wanted to answer. She wanted to spit in her face everything she knew. But she swallowed the words like blades. It wasn't the time. Truth without proof was just a whisper in the middle of noise. She put her phone away in her bag, protected the recordings with a new password, and entered the garage without making a sound. She turned on the lamp and sat down with the notebook on her lap. Next to her, Hugo's old phone blinked. She played the recording again. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm already gone. Mom isn't who she says she is." Hugo's voice no longer made her cry. Now it gave her strength. Martina wrote everything down in a new notebook. She organized the facts, added dates, locations, fragments of conversations. It was a timeline built out of desperation, but with surgical precision. Every word Amelia had spoken was there, including the cruelest part. "Angela took my son from me. She told me it was temporary. I was sick. I couldn't take care of him. It seemed okay for a few weeks. Then she vanished. When I went looking for her, she had already moved. I went to her old house and found it in flames. It wasn't an accident. My sister died. Angela blamed me. I couldn't prove otherwise." Martina had recorded it all, word for word. Amelia had signed a release allowing her to use the testimony when the world is ready to hear the truth. Amid the emotional whirlwind, something began to awaken inside Martina. It was no longer just the desire to clear her name or reclaim the house. It was something deeper, more primal. It was the need to restore what had been destroyed, to give voice to the silenced, to honor Hugo for everything he couldn't say while alive. That night, Letitia found her still awake, papers scattered across the floor. "You look like a war journalist," she said, peeking in. "I'm in a war," Martina replied, without sarcasm. Letitia sat beside her. She looked at the recordings, the photos, the notes. "And what are you going to do with all this?" "Tell it. Record it. Publish it. I'm going to make the world listen. People need to know who Angela really is." Letitia swallowed hard. She glanced toward the house. "That woman is dangerous. Don't forget that. If she feels cornered, she'll bite." Martina looked her straight in the eyes. "Then let her bite. I'm not going to let her devour me." The next morning brought an unexpected revelation. While going through an old folder of Hugo's, she found an unsigned sheet, a new version of the will. It was handwritten. In it, Hugo left the house to Martina. He stated that Angela would receive a monthly allowance, but not the property. The document was complete, except for the final signature. That was all it lacked. Martina stared at the paper for long minutes. She ran her fingers over it, feeling Hugo's presence in every line. "You were ready to tell the truth," she whispered. "They just didn't let you." She stored the will alongside the notebook. Now she had a structure: Amelia's testimony, Hugo's recordings, the evidence in the notebook, and an unsigned draft revealing the true wishes of the man who had died with sealed lips. That afternoon, Angela brought 2 suited men to the house. Lawyers, apparently. "We're going to sell the house," she said bluntly. "I don't want to stay in this neighborhood of nobodies. With what they'll give me for this dump, I'm moving downtown. I already have an offer. Just need to clean up a few things." Martina saw them from the garage window. Her heart began to race. If Angela sold the house, she would lose everything. There would be no ground left to stand on. No place to reveal the truth. That night, she didn't sleep. The next day, she visited an independent journalist. A middle-aged woman with permanent dark circles under her eyes and a sharp gaze. Her name was Patricia. Martina showed her everything. The recordings, the photos, Amelia's testimony. Are you willing to face the consequences? Patricia asked bluntly. This is going to blow up. And I don't mean that figuratively. I'm ready for anything. I only ask one thing, that my voice isn't edited. That my story is told exactly as it is. Patricia agreed. They scheduled a video interview. Martina spoke on camera with a steady voice, even though her hands were trembling. She told everything. From Hugo's burial to the garage. From the notebook to the truth about Amelia. She ended with a sentence that froze the air. I don't want revenge. I want justice. But if I'm denied it, I'll build it myself. The video was published on an independent digital platform. It didn't take long for it to go viral. Martina's face appeared on the profiles of thousands of users. Social media started asking, who is Angela? What was she hiding? Some didn't believe. Others were outraged. But the important thing was that the silence had been broken. Martina expected retaliation. It didn't take long to come. Angela burst into the garage, furious. What did you do, you bitch? Think you're a journalist? Think you're some kind of saint? Why couldn't you stay quiet like all the other failed women? Martina didn't get up. She stayed seated, the notebook in her hands. I'm no saint. I'm your mirror. And you can't stand to look at yourself. Angela slapped her. Martina didn't react. She simply turned her face back and looked at her again. Your days are numbered, Angela said before leaving. I know how to destroy without leaving a trace. Letitia came in seconds later. She had heard everything. She saw the mark on Martina's face and felt something inside her break. That's enough, she said. This has to end. Martina nodded. It's about to end. I just need one more thing. I need justice to see this. To see it all. And then she made a decision that would change everything. She went to court with Patricia. They presented the testimony, the evidence, the recordings. The judge on duty seemed surprised, though composed. It's not common to see a case like this, with so much pain compressed. Martina looked him in the eye. And what do you do with pain? Do you file it away? The judge agreed to review the case. He promised a preliminary hearing. Angela was summoned. The neighborhood was already whispering. No one greeted her. Her friends stopped visiting. Neighbors crossed the street to avoid her. Instead of intimidating her, it made her more aggressive. They want to take me down, but they won't, she muttered. This house is mine. That son was mine. Everything is mine. But it wasn't hers anymore. The truth had started to strip away the walls, the furniture, the image she had so carefully maintained for years. A few days later, Amelia passed away. Her heart couldn't take it anymore. Martina received the news with a silent tear. She was grateful she had made it in time. Grateful she had listened. Grateful that, at least once in her life, someone could die knowing that the truth was on its way. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. Martina didn't tremble. She walked with her head held high. She no longer slept in the garage. She slept in the truth. And there was no room for fear there. Fear no longer served a purpose. Now only memory mattered. And memory does not forget. It does not forgive. It does not surrender. And while Angela put on her lipstick in front of the mirror, believing she could still fool everyone with her makeup of lies, Martina dressed herself in the one thing that cannot be faked, the courage of someone with nothing left to lose. Because she had already lost everything, the only thing she had left was her dignity. And that cannot be inherited. It must be defended. At any cost. 3 days before the hearing, Angela walked out the door with a large suitcase, absurdly expensive sunglasses, and a smile that was painful to look at. She was headed to the airport on her way to Cancun. She said she needed to relax. That the trial was a farce and wouldn't rob her of the rest she deserved. She said goodbye to the gardener with a crumpled bill and to the neighborhood with the same arrogance as always. "When I get back, I hope that ridiculous woman is gone," she told Letitia as she passed by, referring to Martina as if she weren't just a few feet away. Or at least that the judge puts her where she belongs, the street. Martina didn't respond. She watched her walk away from the garage threshold. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She just waited for the taxi to turn the corner and for Angela's figure to dissolve like smoke in the midday heat. Letitia approached with a half-smile that seemed to hold back a hurricane. "Is it time?" "It is," Martina replied. And then it began. The plan had been laid out weeks before. She had waited for this moment with the patience of someone walking barefoot over glass. She knew that even the slightest distraction could cost her everything. But now she had the keys, the silence of the house, the time, and most importantly, the will. Martina crossed the yard, went in through the back door, and took a deep breath. This was her home. Every wall spoke to her. Every corner ached. The kitchen, where Hugo used to cook on Sundays while humming softly. The living room, where they celebrated their first anniversary with supermarket candles. The long hallway where Angela once pushed her for leaving her shoes in the wrong place. Everything was soaked with memories, some good, some cruel. But that day, everything started to change. She walked to the master bedroom. Opened it. The bed was still intact, with the burgundy sheets Angela had picked out after the funeral. A symbolic way to erase Hugo. But it hadn't worked. Hugo was in every wall, every torn photo, every drawer locked with a key, and in every word recorded in his voice. Martina took out her phone and opened a folder of voice memos. She pressed play. Hugo's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end. I'm glad, even if it hurts to know what you had to go through. This was our home, not hers, ours. And if you ever make it back in, do whatever it takes. But do it with love, with dignity." Martina listened and cried, but not out of sadness. She cried with contained rage, with the certainty that she was no longer running away. Now she was moving forward. She pulled out her task list. Every step was written down. 1. Remove Angela's furniture. 2. Clean the rooms. 3. Install hidden cameras. 4. Record the video. 5. Publish it. 6. Meet with the lawyer. Every action had a purpose. Every step a direction. She started in the living room. She took down the golden decorations Angela had put up, those wall clocks, the picture frames with only her in them, as if the house had been built to worship her. She packed everything into boxes, labeled them with a marker, donation. The neighborhood started to notice the movement. Neighbors peeked out. Some looked scared, others curious. A few came over to ask, "Did the lady leave?" Martina smiled for the first time in weeks. "Yes, she left me the house. For a few days. No one asked anything else." Letitia came in with a bag full of snacks and bottles of water. "Need help?" "Yes, a lot. Can you take these boxes to the donation center?" "Gladly. It's time this house could breathe again." Martina went up to the second floor. Angela's room was a vanity museum. Dresses organized by color. Shoes displayed in glass cases. Fake jewelry arranged as if it were emeralds. Martina didn't touch anything of value. She just emptied the drawers, removed the perfumes, cleared out the personal items. Everything into boxes. Everything to the curb. Inside the closet, she found a safe. She didn't try to open it. Not yet. She installed a camera in the ceiling lamp. Another in the hallway. One more in the living room. All connected to her phone. Not out of fear, but strategy. If Angela came back early or did something illegal, everything would be recorded. Then she went down to the study, where Hugo used to write, where he kept his papers, where she found the draft of the will. Everything was just the same. That's where she placed the final camera. Then she sat down at the desk, turned on the lamp, and put the phone in recording mode. She looked into the lens, swallowed hard, and began. My name is Martina. This house was mine. I built it with my husband, Hugo. We lived here until he died, and his mother kicked me out. For half an hour, she recounted everything in detail. Every humiliation, every threat, every night in the garage. She spoke about Amelia, about the testimony, the unsigned will, about how she uncovered the truth. She ended with a broken, but steady voice. Today, I reclaim my dignity, not out of revenge, but for remembrance, because the dead deserve truth, and the living, justice. She posted the video to a brand new YouTube account. She titled it, "This is the story of how my mother-in-law took my home and how I took it back." The video spread quickly. In an hour, it had hundreds of views. In 5, thousands. People commented with outrage, with support, with disbelief. Some women said they had gone through similar experiences. Others offered legal help. A local journalist asked for an interview. Martina didn't respond. She just stared at the screen, as if watching a city burn, one that had once ignored her. That night, she received a call from the lawyer Patricia had recommended. His name was Marcos. Deep voice. Measured words. I saw the video. I have the draft of the will. The judge accepted your request to include the new evidence. You have a real chance. Don't stop now. Martina thanked him. Hung up. Then she walked to the kitchen and cooked something for the first time in weeks. Just plain rice, but with salt and her own fire. She ate in silence, staring at the clean walls. No golden frames. No shouting. The next day, Letitia came with news. Neighbors in the area are raising money to help with your legal costs. They say you look different, that your eyes shine. Martina smiled. They're not shining. They just aren't afraid anymore. Angela returned on the 5th day. She got out of the cab wearing dark sunglasses, tanned, talking on her phone. Yes, I'm back. That little insect must be out on the street. I hope I don't see even her shadow. She opened the door with her key, stepped inside, came to a halt. She didn't recognize the house. The walls were bare, the living room spotless, her decorations gone. She ran upstairs, opened her room. Her clothes, her perfumes, her pictures gone. She went down to the study, found Martina sitting there, notebook on the table. What did you do? Angela screamed. What the hell did you do to my house? Martina didn't move. I cleaned it, got rid of what didn't belong, what only stained its story. Angela lunged at her, but stopped when she saw a blinking red light coming from the lamp. Is that a camera? Several. All active. All recording. Angela stepped back. This is illegal. You're going to pay for this, you bitch. Martina stood up with the notebook in her hands. You know what's illegal? Stealing from your son. Manipulating a will. Threatening a widow. Burning down a house. Angela turned pale. You don't know anything. I know everything. And now half the country has seen it. Everyone's talking about you. Even the judge saw it. It's your choice whether to keep going or stay silent. Angela screamed, smashed a vase, cried, cursed, but she couldn't deny anything. She was no longer the narrator. Now she was the accused. That night, Martina slept in the master bedroom. She lay on the bed she had once shared with Hugo. She didn't cry, just closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Outside, the rain fell again. But this time, it didn't soak the garage mattress. It fell on a roof that could once again be called home. Because the trap wasn't made of poison or knives. It was woven with truth, with memory, with the story of a woman who decided to be silent no more. And when a woman speaks, even if her voice trembles, the world has only two choices: listen or burn. Martina woke up to the sound of her own name being spoken by a television host. She opened her eyes. The screen of the old television in the garage, which Letitia had connected for her days earlier, showed a frozen close-up image of her. The host was speaking in a serious, almost solemn tone. The case of Martina Ruiz, the widow who was evicted by her own mother-in-law just hours after burying her husband, has shaken the entire city. Social media has turned her story into a symbol against the silent abuse within families. Martina swallowed hard. She sat up. Angela's face appeared on screen, captured from one of the home videos. The host continued. The woman has been summoned by the prosecutor's office following the viral spread of a video in which Martina herself exposes not only the abuse she suffered, but also a chain of manipulations, possible acts of forgery, and even an unresolved story of arson and a missing child. Letitia entered with a tray of freshly baked bread. "You're in the news, dear. And not just any news, you're a symbol." Martina didn't smile. She stroked Hugo's notebook resting next to her pillow. "I wish he could see this." Letitia sat beside her and took her hand. "He is. And if he's not, at least he's finally being heard." Hours later, journalists began swarming the neighborhood. Some approached the neighbors. Others asked for Martina. She refused interviews. She had said what needed to be said. What came next was justice, not spectacle. The judge in charge of the case brought the hearing forward, stating that public interest and the urgency to clarify the facts required resolution before the scandal turned into a meaningless media trial. Lawyer Marcos arrived that morning with a briefcase full of papers. "This is no longer just an inheritance case," he said as he sat across from Martina. "We now have accusations of manipulation, threats, identity concealment, and even emotional negligence with legal consequences." Angela isn't facing a simple family dispute. She's facing a truth that's going to hit her like a wall. Martina nodded without blinking. "I'm not doing this for revenge. I know. You're doing it for him. For yourself. For all of us." On the morning of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Media people, activists, neighborhood residents, even women Martina didn't know smiled at her as she passed. Someone at the door shouted, "Brave." Another whispered, "Angela's a witch." Martina didn't respond. She carried a folder in her arms, wearing the same blouse Hugo had last said, "You look beautiful" in. She had slept 3 hours, had cold tea for breakfast, but her steps were steady. Angela arrived escorted by 2 lawyers. She wore dark sunglasses, heavy makeup, and a theatrical expression of wounded dignity. With every step, she huffed as if the air offended her. When she saw Martina, she smirked. "Ready for your final humiliation?" she muttered. Martina didn't answer. She kept walking into the courtroom. The judge was a woman with a stern face, but honest eyes. She opened the session with a clear voice. "Today we address a case that has gone beyond the private sphere. Out of respect for all parties, and given its public impact, this hearing will be recorded, but not broadcast live. It will remain confidential unless otherwise ruled by the court. We ask for order and respect." The legal representatives presented the background. Marcos spoke precisely, without embellishment. He showed the unsigned will, Emilia's testimony, Hugo's recordings, the viral video, and the background of Hugo's alleged illegal adoption. Everything in order, everything documented. Then Angela was called to testify. She took off her sunglasses, cried without tears, said she had always loved her son, that Martina was sick, obsessed, that Hugo had mental problems, which is why he wrote nonsense, that the fire was a tragedy, but she wasn't involved. "I took care of him when no one else wanted to. I raised him. His biological mother was unstable. Hugo called me mom because I was. It's not my fault this woman wants to destroy my son's legacy." The judge looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "Do you acknowledge that you are not Hugo's biological mother?" "I raised him from 6 months old. That makes me his mother. Or does only a piece of paper count?" "That's precisely why we're here," the judge replied. When Martina was called, the courtroom fell silent. She stood without papers, only held Hugo's notebook in her hands. "My name is Martina Ruiz. And I'm not here just for me. I'm here for Hugo, for Amelia, and for every person who was silently stripped of what was theirs. I have no power. I have no family name. The only thing I have is memory. And the truth. My husband couldn't sign this will because he died before he could. But he left something stronger than a signature. He left his voice. The audio recordings were played. The courtroom heard Hugo say he was afraid of his mother, that he signed documents under pressure, that his real mother was alive and hiding out of fear, that he wanted Martina to know everything if anything happened to him. Angela shifted in her seat. She bit her lip. She murmured inaudible words. Then Amelia's video was shown. The judge leaned forward. She listened to every word. When Amelia described how Angela took the child and never returned him, how she set the house on fire and blamed the family, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. When the video ended, Martina spoke again. Angela kicked me out of my house the very day of the funeral. She changed the locks. She threw me out on the street. And then she lied, stole, manipulated. But she didn't do it alone. She did it knowing no one would dare challenge her. Today, for the first time, she faces someone who is no longer afraid of her. The judge called for a 20-minute recess. The room erupted in whispers. Outside, journalists crowded together waiting for the ruling. Martina went to the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her eyes shone. Letitia appeared beside her. Whatever happens, you won. You're no longer invisible. Martina took a deep breath. Yes, but I want them to listen to her. I want Hugo to rest. Returning to the courtroom, the judge sat down with a firm expression. This court recognizes clear signs of emotional manipulation, possible inheritance fraud, and serious falsehoods in the documents. The investigation into the fire from over 30 years ago is reopened, and the prosecution is notified to consider formal charges against Mrs. Angela Ortiz. Meanwhile, this court annuls the validity of the previous will and grants ownership of the disputed house to Mrs. Martina Ruiz until the final succession is legally resolved. A murmur spread like the wind. Angela shouted. She stood up. She slammed the table. No, this is a farce. I raised that child. That which stole everything from me. Two officers approached. The judge struck the table firmly. Order. Mrs. Ortiz, you are not authorized to speak without the court's permission. Martina closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She only thought of Hugo, of Amelia, of the rain, soaking her suitcases the night she was thrown out on the street. When she left the courthouse, journalists surrounded her. They asked 1,000 questions. She only said one sentence. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won because I stopped being silent. She got into the car with Letitia. They drove away from the courthouse. Angela was taken to be questioned by the prosecution. There was something new on her face. It was no longer fury. It was fear. Martina returned home that night. She entered slowly. She touched the walls. She turned on the lights. She sat on the sofa, and she breathed. On the dining table, she left Hugo's notebook. She opened it to the last page. There was a sentence she didn't remember reading before. Thank you for staying when everyone expected you to leave. Martina caressed the page. Thank you for teaching me not to give up. Outside, the moon rose serene. Inside, Martina finally understood there was something stronger than justice, the truth when it is spoken with a bare heart. And that no longer needed a court. Just a brave voice willing to tell it. Martina caressed the page as if the ink were skin. Thank you for staying when everyone expected you to leave. She gently closed Hugo's notebook and placed it on the dining table. The silence of the house, now empty of screams and lies, turned into a different kind of echo. It wasn't absence. It was peace. For the first time since Hugo's death, the house didn't hurt her. The next day, she woke up early. She made coffee and sat by the window overlooking the garden. The flowers she had planted years ago, which Angela had tried to uproot, kept blooming as if they knew the storm had passed. But inside Martina, something was unsettled. She had won the case, yes. Her right to keep the house had been recognized. But inside, she didn't feel that victory truly belonged to her. Letitia stopped by mid-morning, bringing freshly made empanadas. "So what now?" she asked as they sat on the terrace. Martina took a few seconds to respond. "Now, I don't know. I've thought about selling the house." Letitia blinked. She frowned. "What are you saying?" "This house is yours. You fought for it. Are you going to let all of this slip away?" "It's not slipping away, Letitia. I've already done what I had to do here. This house is no longer just mine or Hugo's. It belongs to a story I can't live through every day again. It suffocates me. It's like still sleeping in the same place where someone died. But the memory doesn't leave with the walls, Martina. I know. That's why I want to take it somewhere else. Turn all of this into something that can help someone else." That night, she checked the channel's earnings. The video kept growing. The story had been translated into other languages. She received emails every hour. Women saying, "The same thing happened to me." Men writing, "Thank you for teaching us to see." There were doctors, therapists, lawyers, activists. Even a producer offered to turn her story into a movie. She didn't respond. Among the messages, one caught her attention. It was from Mariella, Rosa's daughter, a woman from the neighborhood everyone knew. Rosa had terminal cancer. She sold empanadas on a corner to support her 3 children. She couldn't afford the treatment, and she had already been denied hospital admission due to lack of resources. Martina read the message twice. Then she called Letitia. "Let's go to the hospital." They left without warning. When they arrived, Mariella was waiting at the door. She cried without tears. Her eyes were dull. "I don't know what to do," she said, hugging Martina. "I can't see her like this anymore. We have no money. And she doesn't want us to sell anything." Martina hugged her as if they had known each other all their lives. "Let me talk to the hospital." They went inside. They looked for the doctor on duty. A young woman with a lab coat stained with ink and a sincere look. Her name was Laura. "I'm Martina Ruiz. Maybe you've seen me on social media. I'm not here as a public figure. I'm here as a daughter, as a widow, and as a woman who can no longer stand to see other women die because of a system that only helps those who can pay." The doctor listened without interrupting. Then she nodded. "Rosa needs urgent treatment. Surgery, chemotherapy, constant care. Her condition is serious. But there's still hope. What there isn't is a budget. Social Security no longer covers these cases without a legal referral. And the process is slow. Rosa doesn't have time." "I'll take care of it," Martina said. "I will pay for everything." The doctor looked at her as if she didn't understand. "Are you sure? How much is a life worth? More or less than a house?" The doctor lowered her gaze. "Less. In this country, less." "Well, we're going to change that. Even if it's just for Rosa." She signed papers, paid a significant amount, coordinated the transfer. Surgery was scheduled for the next day. Martina stayed all night sitting in the hospital hallway with a blanket over her and Hugo's notebook in her hands. Hours later, while Rosa was in surgery, Mariella approached. "Why are you doing this? You don't have to. It's not your problem." Martina took her hands. "Because one day someone saved me. And because I have to do something with this freedom I earned. If I don't use it to save others, then it's worthless." Mariella cried. Rosa came out of surgery with a guarded prognosis. But alive, Martina returned home in silence. She sat in front of the notebook and wrote a letter by hand. Not for anyone, just to leave something said. "I don't want a house to sit in and watch TV. I want a house that serves, that has voices, that heals, that mends, that saves. If this one no longer lets me do that, I'll find another place. But I'm not going to stay here watching the world rot outside." The phone rang. It was Letitia. Martina, there's something you have to know. Rosa's boy, the youngest, was hit by a car this morning. Martina froze. What? He ran after a ball. The car didn't stop. He's in surgery. They took him to San Martin Hospital. We don't know if he's going to survive. Martina hung up without saying a word. She went back to the hospital. She looked for Dr. Laura. This time, her face was different. His name is Elias. He's in critical condition. He has a skull fracture and broken ribs. We already operated on him. But his situation is very delicate. He needs a highly complex surgery. We're going to transfer him to the capital. It costs more than this hospital can cover. Martina took a deep breath. I'll take care of it. Martina, you can't keep going like this. Yes, I can. And I'm going to do it. She emptied her bank account. She sold the remaining items in the house. She uploaded a new video. This time she didn't talk about revenge. She talked about Elias. She told his story. She asked for help. In 24 hours, the campaign raised what was needed. Elias survived. It took him weeks to speak, months to walk. Martina visited him every 2 days. She brought books, cookies, drawings. One afternoon, while reading him a pirate story, the boy touched her hand. Are you my angel? Martina didn't know what to say. She just hugged him. She cried like she hadn't cried during the trial. Not with Angela. Not with Hugo. I'm not an angel. I'm just a woman who doesn't want to see another child lose their world. That night, she went back home and sat down to write in her notebook. I didn't save Hugo. I didn't save Emilia. I couldn't save myself in time. But maybe now I can save others. She left the notebook in a box. Along with a letter from Hugo she found days after the trial. It was kept in an envelope with her name on it, written in shaky handwriting. She opened it with hands wet from sweat. Martina, if you're reading this, it's because you won. Or at least you tried. I failed you. I failed myself. I didn't know how to protect us. But I always knew you were stronger than you said. If you have this house, do something bigger with it than just our memories. Don't let it rot away in silence. Fill it with voices, with people, with life. I'll be in every laugh. And if someday you wonder if you did the right thing, remember kindness isn't measured by inheritances. It's measured by outstretched hands. Thank you for loving me even when I was hiding. Martina read the letter 3 times. Then she put it away. She put the house up for sale. With the money raised, she rented a property on the outskirts. Large, old, with rooms waiting to be filled. She turned it into a shelter. A refuge for women kicked out of their homes. For mothers with sick children. For abandoned elderly people. She called it Hugo's house. Every door had a phrase written on it. Dignity is not begged for. It is raised. Love is not inheritance. It is choice. Surviving is not living. Come, start again. Martina no longer lived alone. She slept in a small room with a single bed and a night lamp. But every morning she was woken by laughter, cries, voices, life. And in the middle of it all, she felt free. Not because she had won a trial, but because she had used the truth to build something that lasted longer than pain. In the garden of the new house, she planted flowers. The same ones Angela had torn out. This time no one touched them. Because when a woman decides to heal, everything blooms in her path. Even if she has to break 1,000 times along the way. Even if she loses everything again. Because what is given from the heart always comes back. And Martina, finally, had learned to live with open hands. The house smelled of freshly baked bread and newly bloomed flowers. Every room was occupied by someone different. A mother with her daughter escaping a violent partner. A grandmother with a trembling voice who had been abandoned in a hospital. A young woman with marks on her arms who barely spoke but knitted with a tenderness that couldn't be taught. Martina walked among them like someone tending a garden, quietly, but touching everything. Not with her hands, but with intention. Hugo's house had become something bigger than just an idea. It was a refuge, yes, but also a statement. A reminder that rubble can be turned into foundations when watered with memory and courage. The walls were full of colors. There were no fancy paintings or expensive furniture, but everything was clean. Everything had a story. Martina no longer wore the hardened expression she had during the months of the trial. She no longer walked looking at the ground. She no longer spoke with a broken voice. She had scars, yes, but she learned not to hide them. Now she spoke in front of groups of women in workshops. She told her story without drama, without raising her voice. She didn't need to convince anyone. She just needed to share. That morning, Letitia caught up with her at the entrance of the shelter carrying a box. "You got this." "No sender." Martina frowned. She took the box. It was thick cardboard, sealed with beige tape. She opened it carefully. Inside was a white envelope with her name written in cursive. There was also a check. Martina held it in her hands for a long moment. The amount made her legs tremble. It was a generous donation. Enough to buy a second property, or to keep the shelter running for years. She sat in silence. She opened the envelope. The letter was brief. "I don't know you personally, but I know your story. I too was kicked out of my home by someone who said they loved me. I saw you fight without destroying, speak without yelling, resist without hardening yourself. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for doing what many dream of and few achieve. This help is not a reward. It's an investment in your fight. Keep going. For you. For us." There was no signature. Martina read the letter several times. Then she got up. She walked to the kitchen where Rosa, already recovered, was baking bread with two other women who laughed like children. "Can we talk?" Martina said. Rosa looked at her with hands full of flour. "Sure. Is something wrong?" "Yes. Something good." She told them about the donation. She proposed opening a bakery that would employ only women in vulnerable situations. Not as an act of charity, but as a dignified, profitable, serious business. Rosa cried without saying a word. Another woman, Camila, who had arrived weeks earlier with feet ruined from walking kilometers to escape abuse, offered to design the logo. She was a graphic designer before her teeth were broken by a kick. Now, with the new dentures the shelter had provided, she smiled again. And created. The bakery opened 2 months later. It was called Renaissance Rebirth. The walls were terracotta colored. The oven was right at the entrance so the aroma would invite people from afar. They sold homemade bread, cakes, cookies, and spiced coffee. Every customer who entered could read a phrase written on the door. "Here work women who learn to rise." "Careful, our stories smell better than bread." The line grew long from the first week. Social media amplified the impact. People wanted to meet Martina, but she never accepted the spotlight. She said the bread should speak for itself, and that what mattered was not her face, but the hands that made it. A local journalist tried to interview her for a national network. She welcomed him, served him coffee, and said, "I don't want to be famous. I just want to be useful. I didn't build this place for myself. I built it for all those who have nowhere to return." That same night, at the shelter, they held a small ceremony. No cameras, no press, no speeches. They placed a plaque at the entrance that read, "This house is a hug for those who were never hugged." Martina stayed alone for a few minutes afterward. She walked to the backyard. There she had planted daisies, sunflowers, lavenders, and a row of jasmines that Hugo used to say smelled like childhood. She sat on the wooden bench that Letitia had given her the day the bakery opened. She closed her eyes. Hugo's voice appeared, not like a ghost, but as a memory. "If you ever manage to get in again, do whatever it takes. But do it with love, with dignity." She allowed herself to cry, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. Letitia sat beside her. She handed her a blanket. "Are you cold?" "No. I'm just at peace." "Did you ever imagine all this would come from that garage?" Martina smiled. "No. I just wanted to survive. and I ended up rebuilding more than I lost. Letitia looked at her tenderly. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself. Yes, and to find others too. In the shelter's dining room, the lights were still on. The women sang, cooked, some knitted, others read. Martina watched them from afar and thought that maybe she hadn't built a shelter. She had built a family. Days later, she received a legal letter. The case against Angela was ongoing. She was being investigated for the fire, document forgery, and tax evasion. She had lost her social status, her properties were seized, and her name had become a stain. Some said she was admitted to a clinic. Others that she had left the country. Martina didn't want to know more. Justice doesn't always come in the form of a hammer. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's forgetting. And sometimes it's watching something bloom that someone tried to bury. That same month, Hugo's house welcomed its 50th resident. An indigenous woman who had arrived alone, with a baby just months old, fleeing from a clan that blamed her for having been raped. Martina met her at the door, hugged her, and said, "This is your home. No one will ask you for explanations here. Just that you live, and that you rest." That night, there was a storm. The water pounded against the windows, but inside the house, everything was warm. Martina sat in the living room, surrounded by women who were knitting, telling stories, or simply sleeping peacefully. She looked at the fireplace's flames and thought that, in the end, this was home. A place where no one forces you to speak, but everyone is willing to listen if you decide to. Martina closed her eyes. She imagined Hugo smiling from some corner, finally seeing her without fear, without burden. She imagined Amelia saying her name with pride. She imagined the little girl she once was, the one who dreamed of having a family, and who finally understood that families are also built from pain. Martina's story became a legend in the neighborhood, not like a fairy tale, but as an uncomfortable truth that many tried to hide. Yet now it lived in the walls of a refuge, in the hands that baked bread, in the eyes of a child who learned to walk again, in the flowers that no one ever pulled out again. And as she walked among them, barefoot and with a shy smile, she finally knew that freedom isn't about having everything, but about letting go of what chains you. She didn't gain a house, but she found her place in the world. Because some battles aren't won with swords, but with bread, with voice, with truth. And Martina was finally free, not because no one was chasing her, but because she no longer had to run from herself. She walked with open hands, with a healed soul. And every step she took among those flowers wasn't just hers. It belonged to all those who were once silenced, and who now, thanks to a woman who refused to be defeated, had a place to start over. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment sharing what you felt while listening to it. And if you've been through a similar betrayal, I'd love for you to share your valuable opinion. Remember to tell me which city you're watching this video from. I'd be honored if you leave a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next surprising story that's appearing on your screen right now. We have entertainment guaranteed exclusively for you. See you in the next video.